Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Kimar Roach, and I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Indeed you are, people. Welcome to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mashal St. Patrick Hewitt, and back with me. I mean, he was back already for the previous episode, but back with me in high definition with a working Wi-Fi is the other host of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Santoki Nagulendran. Santoki, how you doing?
Yeah. Listen, Mash, we're living in historic times. You know, the Wi-Fi is not cutting anymore. Life is good, but you know, as you said, we recorded yesterday. Just yesterday, we done an interview with Roshan Primus. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out on our YouTube channel. And as we always say, the saying is always true: never a dull day in West Indies cricket. I guess we can kind of call this an emergency episode. We've had to drop an episode reacting to the news, Mash, that Andre Coley has been appointed as interim head coach of the West Indies senior men's team for the tours to Zimbabwe and South Africa. Now, we're going to dissect this breaking news, Mash. And I guess when we thought about who could we get on to join us in this analysis, there was only one person we could think of, a returning guest. Regular viewers will be familiar with him. Mash, do you want to give him the intro?
Well, I'm assuming it's Sean Paul. Isn't he your brethren? But no, it's not Sean Paul. Although him and Santoki are now big brethren, it's not Sean Paul. It is another Jamaican though, and we're delighted to get on Jerome Foster. Loads of you will remember Jerome from basically anytime we've done anything with regards to looking at Jamaican cricket, the Scorpions, Tallawahs, whatever it might be. We're always getting Jerome on because, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to anything to do with Jamaican cricket, Jerome is your guy. He's the guy who's going to give you all the details you need to know about what's going on. So without any further ado, let me welcome Jerome onto the show. Jerome, how you doing?
I'm great, Marshall. Santoki, how is it?
Good. Welcome, Jerome. How's everything with you then?
Well, I'm glad to be here. Probably not in this capacity, but it's always great to be on this show.
So listen, Jerome, Santoki said it right from the top of the show. Andre Coley is the new interim head coach for the West Indies men's cricket team. He will be the head coach for both Zimbabwe and South Africa, which is a long stint. It's Coley, I should say Coley. Andre Coley's appointment might be a surprise in and of itself, but an interim head coach position isn't a surprise. I think there was a lot of inklings that the Cricket West Indies were always going to go via the interim head coach position. Certainly, whilst they had to wait for this big report that they said they're going to do with Lara and Mickey Arthur and Judge, I think Judge Robinson, I can't remember, Judge Thompson, High Court judge, looking at what went wrong in West Indies cricket with the previous World Cup and this, that, and the other. So before we even get into Andre Coley's appointment, do you think an interim head coach is the right thing to do for Zimbabwe and South Africa?
Initially, I was against it because I didn't see the purpose of having an interim coach on such a tough tour, especially South Africa. But then when I really analyze the situation, it's best to have somebody like that because after the T20 debacle, a lot of talks have been made, and then Phil stepping away. Between now, which is December, you only have a month before the next tours. So how is it that you're going to get somebody to come into this almost like a sore, to be quite honest? It's been festering for some time. It's not a surprise that it's interim for me because it had to go that way, because you want the new person to come in with some time on his hands or her hands to determine what they want to do going forward. Probably give them a chance to watch a couple of regional games to get an understanding of the culture, the traditions, etc. before you get into the main course, which is coaching the elite team. So it's not a surprise to go interim. Some may find it a little bit of a testing situation because another country, probably like an England or even India, might not go to an interim at this stage because they're saying that it's a month and they have enough quality coaches around their countries to find to suitably fill the position. But in our case, the debriefing hasn't even come into Cricket West Indies as yet. They haven't really gotten the report as yet. So what is it that you're going to be appointing the new coach on? What is it that he's going to be working on? So the interim is probably the best option at this point.
Santoki, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Andre Coley, obviously, he's been well over a decade working in a regional system, various teams, Jamaica Scorpions, assistant for Jamaica Tallawahs in CPL. He's worked with the Windward Islands, the High Performance Academy. Bearing in mind that sort of knowledge and experience, were you surprised at his appointment as interim head coach, or do you think this is like he's deserving of this moment?
Yeah, it's a bit of a surprise to me that he was selected because we were hearing rumors about Darren Sammy possibly being the interim coach for the South African tour. Remember, the Zimbabwe was always in the schedule, but you didn't know when it was going to be played. It was just confirmed recently. So we were hearing Darren Sammy at one stage. I spoke with Jimmy on December 9, I think, at Savannah Park, the Friday that Brazil lost that World Cup game. I think that's December 9. Yeah.
Oh, wait, Jerome, were you mourning or were you not carrying Brazil though?
The former. I was actually mourning. Yeah. So he was part of the level 1 coaching course along with Chris Brabazon and Andre Coley. All three were at Savannah Park on the final day. That was a Friday. And I asked him about the situation of the coaching, and he said that he would be an interim coach. He didn't mention to me if it was going to be a local or foreign interim, but normally when you go interim, it's somebody within the system. So I was thinking probably Graham West or another coach probably from Guyana that has been around the team for some time now. Griffith, he has been around the team for some time. So I was thinking that along that line, because Coley is a part of the emerging team, I was saying that you probably want to have the continuity of not really breaking up the emerging players who are at the academy to continue working with their coach. But looking at it, it's probably the best option because he has been around the setup before. He has been around the team with Phil Simmons. I understood that Phil wanted him back around the setup when Phil came back into the post in 2019, but he was a part of the Jamaica Scorpions squad and it was too early into his stint with the Scorpions. He didn't leave at that time. So he was always thought about or banded about of being around the team. And he's highly rated as well by Cricket West Indies because he did give up the Jamaica Scorpions work to get into that Cricket West Indies academy. So he's always thereabouts. He's part of the performance camps. He's part of the A teams. He has been a part of Windward Islands Volcanoes. I'm almost sure that they won the Super 50 with him as a coach in 2018. The Scorpions got a final with him. 4-day cricket hasn't been the best for us in recent times, but you saw a change in how he was approaching things. So maybe it's the best option at this point for Cricket West Indies.
Santoki, if I just come to you, because I'm going to look at this in kind of a football analogy, right? If a manager loses their job, falls on their sword, whatever you want to call it with Phil, right? You normally would go within the setup and say, carry us through until such a point that we have now appointed a new manager. And as Jerome says, when you actually look at Andre's CV, by local standards, it's extensive. He was the assistant to Phil when we won in 2016, the T20 World Cup. Jerome is correct. Andre was the head coach for Windward Islands when they won Super 50 in 2018. He's assisted the women's team. I think he stepped into the breach actually when the women's team, was it when they went to England? I can't remember, but he stepped into
after the World Cup. After the World Cup that we had a bad time. Yeah, he actually stepped in. Right. Yeah.
So he stepped in for the women's team as well. He was the head coach when Bangladesh A came earlier this year for the A team matches that we played. Of course, he's with West Indies Academy. He was part of the initial high performance center at Cave Hill. So all of those players like Jason Holder and Craig Brathwaite and all that lot who've come through from that. In fact, he was the head coach when that era, Holder Brathwaite came third in the Under-19 World Cup in 2010. So if I think of it as a football analogy, and you're like, boy, we don't have a manager. We need somebody from within who just knows the setup. Santoki, you can't get more extensive than this.
Yeah, exactly, Masho. I think it'd be interesting to see what the fan reaction is in the coming days. But I think because he's not a quote-unquote big name, it will probably be a low-key reaction in terms of appointment. But Mash, you said his credentials, his experience of working in the system, he knows the system inside and out. So you'd think he'd be well-placed at the helm. But Jerome, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts. Do you think there's any chance of him being appointed permanent head coach? If, for instance, he went to Zimbabwe and South Africa and we secured wins in both series, do you think there's any possibility he could be head coach? Or do you think literally they just see him as an interim head coach? No matter what happens in these series, they'll move on to a different name come June, July?
It would be a bad thing to have him now as an interim and then just shovel him into the head coach position based on a short-term result. Because if you had him as your mainstay from the go, then might as well you would have appointed him now and saying that you take us forward from here. We believe in you. We believe in you. Obviously, he's going to be having the thoughts that he wants to coach a West Indies team. I think that is his ultimate objective. He probably won't say it publicly, but I don't think he should be the man going forward. I believe he has to be the person who guides our local coaches because he's far more qualified than our territorial coaches to take the game forward. And it's a reason why he's going around the region to help upskill the coaches because he has a far greater education in terms of cricket and his understanding and so on and delivering the courses. So he could be the man between the head coach who should come in, I think, and the cricket and the director of cricket. So he's basically the feeder towards the rest of the coaches around the region.
So in football terms, Jerome's basically saying there's no Ole Gunnar Solskjaer story here. There's no opportunity.
No. It would be difficult if, in my estimate, even though he understands the players and he's familiar with majority of the players like Blackwood and Brathwaite and Holt and so on. I think the West Indies need somebody that they are not familiar with. They need different ideas and different mindset and. It could be somebody from the region still, but you just need somebody that they're not really used to. They don't want to get too comfortable. You want a different form of planning, a different form of tactics, and so on, rather than what you've been accustomed to for 10, 12 years. Because players, it's not really just players, it's human beings. It's who you're familiar with, you behave most nonchalant with. It's who you're familiar with, you get into a comfort zone with. You're not that Andre is not a disciplinarian because when he was around the Scorpions, players had to know themselves and players had to behave in a specific way, even in the venue. Certain things you couldn't say, certain things you couldn't do. You had to respect the media and so on. Previously, players would shy away from the media and don't want to talk. He ensured that at some point you spoke to the media, but there was a process. You had to speak to him first. You had to be sending things. So he is a disciplinarian by himself, but I'm putting it into a perspective where the current setup, our test team is actually doing better than the other teams. The rest of the teams, it needs a serious shaking up. It needs something different. It needs revitalizing. It needs some different minds coming into it, different planning, a different way of playing, a different style of playing. I don't know who that coach is going to be, but I don't think he is that person to take us forward.
Two questions I've got off the back of that, Jerome. First one's quite easy. When the new coach comes in, let's say it's an overseas coach. Argument's sake, it's an overseas coach. Actually, even if it's not, would you keep Andre around the setup, or would you say you're better served going back to the academy and helping the next generation of cricketers?
Well, if the new coach comes in, naturally he would want his assistant. I would assume, but Andre has to play a pivotal role between the South Africa series and the series that comes after that. I think that is the Pakistan series. I think we'll go back to Pakistan after that. How is he going to be translating our information from the previous series to the new series? What is it he's going to be telling the coaches? Obviously, coaches sit and watch cricket now, and everybody has data and everybody can see the details of players and so on. But in terms of the style that you want to apply, the style that you saw, the whole players are reacting to different things, you want that information coming from him. And he's playing a pivotal role now in the high performance or the academy. I wouldn't want to really trouble that, because as you saw in the cricket, in the Super 50 recently, you had a lot of potential players there, but they still need a lot of development. And he has started that development. I don't think you want different signals to be going towards them. No, you want continuous message from the same person going towards them before that cohort is finished. So I will finish with him there first, and then we take it from there. So the new coach should get a clean slate and decide where he wants to go from.
Secondly, before Santoki comes back in, just looking at the Scorpions, what did, in your mind, Andre, beyond like the disciplinarian approach, in terms of the cricket, because the first season, I think we came fifth in the 4-day, and then the 2021 Super 50, we came semi-finals, I think, in that one. What did you see with his work with the Scorpions, which, and I'm talking now on the field or in development, where you thought actually he maybe helped this particular player develop, or you saw a certain change in the fielding? Like, I know he was big on fitness when he was there. So what type of things did you see that you think might serve him well transitioning to the senior men's regional side?
Patience, especially with the batters. He was always trying to have them to bat a certain amount of balls per match. The batting, as poor as it was for majority of the years after our 2012 success, in 2019, 2020, especially when Jermaine Blackwood got back into the West Indies team, and then Nkrumah Bonner got back into the West Indies team, you had the team actually batting towards a particular goal, and they were trying to bat 120 overs. They were trying to bat 110 overs. They were trying to bat a lot of balls. And he's always focusing on the batting aspect, because mentally, he feels majority of the game is played with the brain. So he was focusing on concentration, having the players batting for longer periods. He was instilling a lot of values into your wicket, as to put more value on your wicket, more purchase on your wicket, and make it difficult for people to get you out. So you saw that with even people like Paul Palmer Jr., who excelled in that year as well, the year that Blackwood and Bonner got back into the West Indies team. He did extremely well. He was on the cusp of the West Indies team. He got into the West Indies A team. He was part of, I think, a 35-man squad name that was supposed to be going to England or something like that. So you saw a couple of players coming through. Wicketkeeper Romain Morris was one of those players. Marquino Minley, he was always good enough. Nicholson Gordon was probably one of the big revelations under his tenure. So John Campbell got back into the West Indies team as well under his stewardship. So those type of players and their performances under him, they would give him a lot of credit for what he did. And when you go to when he went to Savannah Park, even the COVID-19 days, he always had a strict regiment as to how he went about things, and players had to show up, even though you had to be training in small groups. You had players there had to turn up every day to complete their fitness standards and do their batting and their bowling and their drills and so on. So he's big on that, but he's very big on batting, improving the batting. That is his main aspect and goal in any team. Even the other day at the level 1 course where he was, the drills were centered around batsmanship and improving batsmanship and what you can learn from young players and what coaches can do to young batters, rather than dictating to them how to play, because the game keeps on evolving. I think recently I heard Ben Duckett saying the sweep shot is almost like a forward defensive for him now. In 1970, 1980, playing the sweep shot was almost a new dawn. So he's basically telling coaches now that, listen, take what the players have and improve it. Don't try to force your values and your principles. Show them the right way, but still, if they have qualities, you basically enhance and nourish it rather than try to diminish it. So he's very good at those type of things. So that is why I'm saying you need him around the setup. I don't think you can have him as your main coach, I should say, not course, your main coach, because he should be the one that helps to push the West Indian way that has been preached about and talked about for some time now.
Michelle, I'm gonna come to you briefly because this will purely be based on your opinion, but obviously we don't know whether Andre is going to be part of the selection panel like Phil Simmons was, or what input he's going to have into the composition of the side. But bearing in mind the work he's done regionally and his work with the Jamaica Scorpions, do you think this would be a perfect opportunity to bring in someone like a Brandon King into the side? Do you think Brandon King would look at this appointment and think, okay, this is a good opportunity? Or do you just think as an interim coach, it's going to be quite conservative and kind of be led by what Desmond Haynes sort of selects as lead selector?
I mean, I'm intrigued to see what I saw Jerome smiling when you mentioned Brandon King. But that's listen, if Brandon King's not selected for this Zimbabwe tour, I don't know if he ever will be selected. It's now or never, as far as I'm concerned. It's going to be. Do you know what's going to be interesting to me, Santoki, is when, and I say this with respect, when Phil and like Pollard and Puran, etc., were captains and this and the other, it was too easy for people to do the whole, the Trinis, they're running West Indies cricket. I don't think they're going to do that as much with Andre at the helm, because who's really arguing that Jamaicans are running West Indies cricket? Who's really making that argument? So Andre actually may be a stabilizing force in so much as taking a lot of heat away from focusing on just the head coach and should they be there, should they not be there, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, going back to your question, Brandon King, I'd call him up in an instant. I don't think that should even be debatable. But then I guess that's why I made the point about Jamaica. If King got a call up, it wouldn't surprise me. People went, "Oh, just because there's a Jamaican head coach, Brandon King now gets a call." But I think the rational thought process should be, now's the time to introduce some players for this Zimbabwe tour, because it doesn't count for anything. We're not going to get too many quote unquote free tours where we can basically experiment. This is one. Jerome, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I've never been a big fan of the small talk about people selecting people from countries and so on, but it's West Indies cricket and things do happen. Shea Hope, I criticized him heavily here in Jamaica for his lack of form in Test match cricket and his lack of commitment to changing his technical improvement, of making technical improvements to help his red ball cricket and getting back into red ball cricket. Shea Hope, Brandon King, I think those two players should be given a chance on the next two tours. As bad as Hope's record has been for the last before he was dropped for 3 years, it was abysmal. But the way how I see our batting is going, these two players can actually offer things to our batting. Devon Thomas made his debut recently. He was one of the top scorers, obviously, in regional cricket. But somebody like a Brandon King, who has been around your white ball team, is basically the one that you're going to be centering around your 50 over team from now on, based on what I'm seeing happening with the white ball team, with people opting out of tours and people not being available, etc. He's always there. He should be given that opportunity now. It's where, as a selector, I don't think you can just use what is in front of you, especially with our state of cricket. We only play 10 regional games. Our players are not usually available to play even 6 of those games because of other commitments. I think his last 4-day innings, he actually made 100, if I'm not mistaken, Brandon. So what is it that you're going to be using to select him going forward? He has been the top scorer in CPL, did well in Super 50, wasn't the top scorer, obviously, but he did well again. There has to come to a point where you're probably going to shuffle him into the team or shovel him into the team. Probably not start the first test or start the second test, but have him around that group or have him as part of your core batting group where you want to take going forward. Because when you look at it, Nkrumah Bonner is in his 30s. Jermaine Blackwood is in his 30s. Craig Brathwaite, he has been around for forever, but he's just about getting into his 30s, right? Shamar Brooks is in his 30s. Where is it that you're going to get your next set of batters from? You have to start molding those players. Devon Thomas made his debut in his 30s as well. So that's 5 players I just called that played in the last test. 5. And those players are in the top. Well, Bonner didn't play, but he was part of the squad. Those players are in your top 7. So that is the core of the batting. You have to find some form of continuity. You have to find some succession planning in the mix. But Andre doesn't like chaos. He doesn't like mass hysteria. He doesn't like a lot of media around the team. He doesn't like a lot of noises coming out of the camp, a lot of news coming out. So he's going to keep things in his way, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of being a disciplinarian. So he's going to keep things quiet around the team. You're probably not going to have certain things coming out about selection and players were called and they weren't available. And because even in Jamaica, when players believe that they were not given a fair opportunity to play, it's almost as if he just hold them by the shoulder, around the neck and say, hey, next time you'll get an opportunity to do so, or this is what we're doing. Because he was a big campaigner for youth and going forward, because he thought the Scorpions lacked direction for a couple of years. He was saying that he didn't know if the team was prepared to win or the team was prepared for development. He just had chopping and changing and random selection of players all over the place. So with him, I don't know, as Santoki said, I don't know how much of an impact or input he's going to have in terms of the composition of the squad. But I'm sure whenever he gets a chance, and he must have something to say about the team, he's going to put a valid case in terms of forward thinking and planning and development. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Brandon is a part of the team.
Santoki, Jerome said no media around the team. What are you saying? Caribbean Cricket Podcast done out here.
No, when I say no media, I say you can't just bombard the team and do what you want and just speak to anybody you want to speak to. You have to go through a set protocol, etc. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So you can't just turn up with your cameras and say, hey, I want to talk to him, I want to talk. No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Yeah.
Listen, Santoki, I'll let you close this one off.
Yeah, I guess there's one final closing question, Jerome. If you could have your wish as to who would be the next West Indies permanent head coach, at this point in time, who would you go with?
My first option was Shiv. I don't know how much that can work now that his son is in the team, but my first option was Shiv. Based on what he was doing with the Tallawahs, what I saw, what I heard coming out of the camp, some of the players expressed a lot of satisfaction with how he went about business, how detailed he was, how he was continuously relaying information and how to improve. As much as the competition was short, he was still able to help a couple of players and to help them improve their game, and they spoke highly about him. Well, he stepped down from the women's work in USA. I don't know if that is a signal to us that he's probably going to take the job, but that is one. Ideally, I want somebody from overseas. I don't have a name as yet, but I need somebody from overseas. That's what I was thinking initially. And when I saw Mickey Arthur's name in the review structure, I was assuming that he was going to be the coach, because why would he be detailing and running through our process of what happened in Australia and where to take the game forward and how we do things, unless he's just a good friend of the director of the cricket or a good friend of Cricket West Indies? Why would he be doing such a job? So, and I wouldn't have a problem with Mickey, because Mickey
I'd have no problem with that if it's Mickey Arthur, no problem.
Yeah, Mickey brings a lot of ruthlessness. He brings a lot of discipline. He's detailed. As much as he's going to ask players to do homework, he's going to give you something. He's going to achieve something. He's going to bring up 2 or 3 players through the ranks. Every country that he has been to, you have seen it. Sri Lanka has Pathum Nissanka now, who is doing extremely well, came through his hands. Pakistan, he's always unearthed somebody there. Australia, he went there. South Africa, we're number 1 under him, and so on. So I had him as my number 1, but Shiv is the next best for me.
Listen, we might have to clip that match, because if we get the 2-0 win in Zimbabwe and 2-0 win in South Africa, Jerome might be coming on saying, Andre at the wheel, man, give him a contract.
Listen, the final thing, before we do actually wrap up, because the one thing none of us have actually said, Okay, yeah, they've announced that. What's actually more intriguing to me is who's actually going to be Andre's backroom staff. That's
Yeah,
what's
that
really
was
intriguing. So I'm going to just throw a name out there, and this might sound ridiculous, and I know he'll listen to this episode as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy goes to help him out. I wouldn't be surprised. Just because I'm thinking he can't take all of the academy staff with him because they have to stay back in Antigua. So would he take like a Curtly Ambrose as a bowling coach? Who's actually going to go with him? And remember, they've announced that Roddy Eswick has left, Monty Desai has left, so they're going to need a whole brand new team. So do you think that's ridiculous to say that Jimmy might have to go and help him?
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be, and it wouldn't be surprising as well because remember he did something like that in Sri Lanka, I think, when there was a coaching situation and Floyd Reefer was there, I think, for some time, or it was Bangladesh when Ravman ended up
Nick
captain.
Potter, I think,
Nick Potter, yeah, and Ravman had to captain a couple of the games, and Jimmy was there to help out with the team as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised with the Curtly Ambrose thing as well, because Sir Curtly assisted the Tallawahs recently, where Andre Coley was the assistant to Shiv. So that wouldn't be a surprise either. That's actually a good guess. But I'm not surprised that Roddy and Monty Desai were told not to think about it, because it's, to me, it's almost, remember that you're looking forward. These two guys have been under the previous regime, so it would make total sense to keep them around the players any longer when you're looking for something different going forward. As much as we're going to be playing 6 tests for this year, you're going to play 4. So the new coach is probably going to have 2, but for those 2, you want your best options going forward. And I don't think, and it's not bashing anybody here, I don't think Roddy can do any more. He did extremely well up to 2018, 2019, but things have really tapered off with our fast bowling in recent times. So I think that is probably the wise thing to do. Probably was a Cricket West Indies decision as well to just offload those people. Yeah.
Santoki, what are you saying?
I think it'll also be interesting to see if we do actually go with one single head coach. I mean, I know Johnny Graves has hinted in the media that he would prefer split formats at this point in time, but obviously that depends on the budget and the finances. But I think the way cricket is going and how distinct the formats are at the moment, it's going to be very hard if it is one head coach to balance sort of Test cricket, one-day ODI cricket, and T20 cricket. So it'd be interesting to see what route they take in that regard as well going forward.
But when you look at the teams that use the 2 coaches, though, it's not a lot of teams. It's just England it is just England really, because India did it when they're trying to give Rahul Dravid some rest. Australia did it when they're giving Andrew McDonald some time to refresh his mind or so on. They give a coach to lead a tour somewhere that they probably don't want to go because of safety issues or family issues. So it's not really the way that you probably want to go in the West Indies setup, because I don't think because we don't have the same quality of T20 players that we had before, where you probably could just say, all right, we had a good core of players there, and we could just have a different coach to work with that team, because that team is actually a super team, and you probably can do certain things. What we need going forward is that we need our best players probably playing all the formats. The way how we're struggling now. So to have that one goal and one direction is probably the best thing to do. And I don't think enough coaches are out there as well, because of all these T20 leagues around the world. You're not going to have all the high quality coaches for you to really say that you want to split here and split there to do your best for your country. So it's going to be difficult, and it needs a lot of money as well, because for England to keep Baz McCullum just a Test cricket, they have to pay him some certain amount of money because he was at KKR.
Yeah. I think the problem for West Indies is like you said, Jerome, rightly, before the T20 team was excellent. So when we had the head coach, if you took licks in Test cricket, at least you had T20 cricket there to give you some salvation. Now you're getting cussed out all 3 formats. It's gonna take a lot of mental strength for whoever comes in to be getting cussed out all year round.
Exactly. Listen, it's also worth pointing out as well that we only play 6 Test matches. So even if we had one coach for Test matches, how much you paying them for 6 Test matches in a year?
Exactly.
So that person would have to be a local. We'd have to do a tapper and just get a local coach.
Yeah.
Get a local coach. Get a local
And
coach.
then, yeah,
Listen, Jerome, that's the perfect way to end the show, you know. Thank you for coming on as ever, Jerome. And listen, we're going to try and bring you back on. Once we know who the backroom staff is and when we get a few more announcements and stuff, we're going to bring you back on to try and dissect that as well. But thank you so much for coming on, man.
no problem. It's always a pleasure to be here.
No worries. Santo, get any last words before we wrap this one up?
No, thank you for Jerome for coming on. And Mash, who knows when we'll be recording another episode? It could be tomorrow with West Indies Cricket. You never know what's going to happen day to day, man. So keep locked, everyone. Stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
Thank you and good night, people.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.